Public Speaks.
Yes, sir.
I have a blog in the works now, and the theme of my blog is that North Canton Council is taking on the looks of being a respecter of persons.
That's not true. That's not true at all. Since of my presidency, I've given every person that ever wants to speak at Public Speaks adequate time to speak. Mr. Osborne was given over 11 minutes last week. He was asked at the 5-minute mark to close his remarks. He's well aware of the rule of 5 minutes. We had spent 55 minutes prior to the opening of the council meeting on the subject to which he was speaking, to which he sat in the audience and heard. The majority of the genesis of his prepared text, which he read from, was already addressed in that 55 minutes. First the law director asked Mr. Osborne, he had been past 1 minute past the 5-minute limit. And he asked for leave for additional time, which I have always granted and will continue to grant him. And he has the right to come here. He's a citizen. He has the right here to come and speak. And if the matter to which he is speaking on is germane to the issue, or it's new information that the council should hear, I will give Mr. Osborne 2 hours to speak. I have no problem with that. But when it is redundant and he interrupts the meeting when he's asked to sit down, it's not fair. I mean, Mr. Osborne knows the rules of council. He's a former council member, and he's been to every meeting, I think meetings that I've unfortunately been ill or not been able to attend. So there is no movement to quelch or silence the public. As long as I am the president, I have the authority under the rules of council to allow him to continue. Mr. Wechter was asked, he was here, a former council member, I think 2 weeks before Mr. Osborne. Mr. Foltz asked for additional time for him, and it was voted by 4 members of the council to allow him additional time to speak. Mr. Osborne has that right. If he would say, I'd like to have more time, and he wants it voted, but no, I always allow him to do that. But he also must respect. He cannot stand here, as the minutes will hold out, for 6 minutes and berate us and threaten to sue us. Now, it works both ways. This is a public meeting. He's interrupted. I have to call a recess to bring decorum back to the meeting. That's not fair. You know, I have nothing against Mr. Osborne speaking, or will I ever have anything against him speaking. So
is the gist of your statement that if Mr. Osborne was more civil, he'd get more time, he'd get more...
You know, Mr. Osborne is technically a bright guy. You know, and I'm not trying to patronize him in this. Mr. Osborne comes up with sometimes some very good ideas. However, his relational skills, sometimes when it begins to be, and he claims there's not a personal attack. He's attacking the mayor last week in his ability to, in his discretionary privilege, to put the money out for the grant. But if he would have simply read that to 5 minutes and sat down, or said, I need an additional 2 minutes to finish, I would have allowed it. And I will always allow Mr. Osborne to speak, because many times he comes up with some very good ideas. The week before, he contacted me by phone in a matter about the why about a road and moving a light. And it was a brilliant idea, to which I had them incorporated into the program, because it was a very intelligent and well thought out proposal. So Mr. Osborne is a valuable citizen from that standpoint. It just, unfortunately, sometimes I don't know if he just gets excited or what.
So it's really not a matter of time from your perspective, but a matter of civility?
That's all. Just simple respect. You know, there's some nights, like tonight was a very, very weak attended meeting. Last week, it was probably 25 people here. You know, you disrupt a meeting, it upsets me, it upsets the rest of the council members. That's not what we're here for.
So let's take the Wechter situation.
Okay.
So if he'd handled himself like Mr. Wechter,
he would have given
given the same amount of time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Mr. Osborne will tell you, and I think if I brought him over, he would tell you, I've always extended that courtesy to him. I don't always agree with Mr. Osborne, but we at least agree to disagree. And I will continue to be that way. I have no intention, as long as I'm the president, to sit here, and I'm counseled weekly to do that, but I don't think that's right. This is the people's government. As long as he comes here, he's civil, which is 99.9% of the time. He doesn't attack individuals. He can speak, and if he needs additional time, simply ask for it. However, it's a matter that's already been covered in times of the essence, a matter already covered for 55 minutes. I really think that 11 minutes is sufficient to cover that information. That was my opinion. And I felt bad at what happened, because again, I think he believes that we're singling him out.
He does.
And that's.
I mean, I'll have to say, I've been to a fair number of North Canton meetings, and his point of view has some credibility with me.
Well, I respect that. I take that. Now, am I saying that every member of council agrees with me? Probably not. But fortunately, in this particular case, I have the right to determine. Now, they have the right to override me and say, well, no, we're not going to do it. But they respect me enough, they're not going to do it. But 95% of the time, Mr. Osborne, you give him additional time, he doesn't generally violate that. He'll come to bring the matter to a close most of the time. Last week, I don't know if he got excited, if he got angry. I can't speak.
Now, did he leave on his own, or was he escorted?
He left on his own. He was yelling on his way out, and he was yelling at the top of his voice. Whether the tape proves that out. He was at. I said, Mr. Osborne, you're out of order. Please sit down. And
so increased civility would go a long ways to getting him the time he thinks he ought to have.
Absolutely. Okay. All he would have to say to us is, I cannot finish in 5 minutes. Will you please allow me 2 more minutes? It's the same as a courtroom. If you ask the judge for leave to do something, he's going to generally grant it. And I would do the same to him. I mean, as I say, everything he comes up with is not perfect, and it's not applicable to city government. But there's always that one time, and he comes up, and as I said, a week or 10 days prior to, came up with a brilliant idea, which I was tickled to death to put into play. And he has an uncanny ability to do heavy research and come up with some pretty good ideas. He's got a lot of time to spend to do that. And so consequently, you have to take his counsel sometimes, and I don't always give him credit for it. I apologize. But, I listen. I don't always give him the credit. Maybe I should once in a while say, you're onto something there. I think you got a good idea.
But just to make it clear, there absolutely is no policy and no de facto arrangement to shut Chuck Osborne down.
No. Wait. Let me be clear on one thing. The rules of council say 5 minutes. I was not the proponent of that. That was voted in. Normally speaking.
That was Councilman Polch.
Right. And normally speaking, we don't enforce that. We have a timer that comes up on the clock.
Right.
When do we enforce it? When we have that right to do it. He was 9 minutes into the speech when I asked him to bring it to a. Well, first the law director asked him, and I asked him, please bring it to a close. I'll give you 30 seconds. We ended up with 2 more minutes. But my thought on that was, and maybe, do I have the right and my discretion to think of that? Had I not had the 55-minute presentation just on the same subject matter, and he had all the answers to that. It was my opinion that he was here to try to.
So you think this is grandstanding on his part?
Well, his intention was, at least I ferreted from what I listened to, is to put the mayor on a spot while he was giving additional money. He wanted, and he, something that he did not need to spend or disrupt the meeting to find out. And I don't know if the word is the proper word is grandstanding, but he wanted some attention from it. And, he was yelling at me, he's going to sue me on his way out at the top of his voice. I mean, I don't think that was very nice. I mean, I have to conduct a civil meeting.